What if you found a new way of watching your favourite show? The plot and the characters are the same, but the meaning is completely different. And what if the way you thought about movies was never the same again? Are you willing to take that chance? Welcome to Abstract Nonsense, the Fan Theories and Alternate Readings podcast. My name is, of course, Joe Lewis, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Anthony Bull. How are you, Anthony?
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
I'm going quite well. How are you?
I'm good. Good. How you been?
I've been excellent. It's been a while since our last recording session.
Oh, has it? Has it really?
Yes.
To the listeners, I think
passed.
it's been just a couple of days.
It has been a couple of days in our timeline. For me, it's been a couple of months.
In the most darkest of timelines.
But that's besides the point, because we are here to talk about a very dark timeline indeed, and that is, of course, the well-loved movie franchise, I guess. But we're specifically focusing on the first movie. It's The Matrix. Yeah. This was a great deal. It was a very important movie to me because it was the first movie I watched when I was like the first MA movie, I think. Is it MA? As in Australian ratings?
It's M.
Yeah, okay. Well, it was one of the first M movies I watched, and I watched it on my 13th birthday, and it was like,
Yeah. I'm a big boy now.
I'm a man now.
I'm a man.
I can watch M movies.
Yeah. For me,
See you later, Disney.
For me, this was the movie that sort of knocked Terminator 2 off the top of the list for me when I was younger. I was like, oh, Terminator 2, best movie. Then I see The Matrix, I go, I think Matrix is maybe number one now. I don't know if it is now. I don't know what my number one movie is. I've seen a lot of crap. Maybe it's just all filtered in my head.
I remember hearing whispers about it at school. People were like, oh, the Nebuchadnezzar, blah, 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 blah. And I had to watch it. So my friends came over for my 13th birthday party and we watched it. Yeah, you were not invited at this point.
No, I wasn't invited.
I'm pretty sure my parents did not like you.
I think you assumed that your parents didn't like me.
They definitely did not like you.
Your parents love me, all right? They think I'm great.
You're a bad influence, is what they used to say.
Then why'd you hanging out with that Anthony boy?
The Matrix, for those who don't know, is a 1999 science fiction film that tells of the story of a man named Neo and his discovery of the truth about his world and the truth about himself. He discovers the world he thinks he knows is a computer simulation, and he is the one destined to save it all.
Or is he?
Yeah, so one of the things that we'd like to do on this show, and it's not for copyright purposes at all, is to review the theme song of the movie or show that we're talking about. The Matrix theme song, as you can hear in the background right now. What did you think about it, Anthony? Amazing theme song. You've got no critical opinion to contribute.
Well, I'm not an art critic, am I? I can't say, I love the symbols and I love the whatever they're called. You know, whatever this music does. Like, that's the best thing in the world, and it made Skrillex's career, maybe? I don't know. All I know, all right, is there's this amazing song that whenever you watch conspiracy videos, and you know me, I love me some conspiracy videos, this became the theme song to every conspiracy video ever.
It's in Loose Change, it's in the Great Global Warming, Swindle. It's in all of them.
It's in that the Illuminati is secretly running the church or something, and it's like...
What's that?
Well, there's all this evidence apparently that the church is being run by the Illuminati.
Okay, sure. All right, well, we're not here to talk about the Illuminati, or are we? We'll get into that shortly. But we are here to talk about The Matrix, and why don't you start us off, Anthony, with one of the ones that you told me earlier. You think that The Matrix is an MMO.
I do. I think that you could read that as The Matrix being an MMORPG. MMORPGs has just sort of come out a couple of years beforehand. The Matrix that came out. But EverQuest, one of the games that sort of like was the pioneer of it, came out around about 1999. So this kind of fits within the right around the timeline of when MMOs are starting to break out and get huge.
The mud time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Multi-user dimensions for some that was a big thing, like the text multiplayer text games. There was a big thing in the early 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that the characters in the movie are exceptional computer programmers.
Okay.
Well, we don't know that, but we can only assume it because Trinity is known to hack. Neo is making his own software and is hacking things as well. It can only be assumed that all the characters, therefore, are exceptional at computers, and that's how they got out of the Matrix. Right?
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no else to explain to it. So the assumption is that these people are all exceptional people, and they're living in the real world. Now, we know Neo's job is kind of crappy. His job is he's constrained within his own kind of world, and he's an exceptional individual, but his boss doesn't really care. his boss basically treats him like any other employee who should be at his desk on time to start work. And he's realizing that the real world is kind of shitty. And like a lot of people in IT, instead of attacking their boss like they'd love to, they like to punch him in the face. Instead, they go in RPGs, they play MMORPGs, and they basically get a level 70 character and rule over their own dominion. So it's a power fantasy used by IT nerds to escape the hardships of real world.
In this theory, then, how do you disseminate, is that the correct word? Distinguish the two realities, so what's actually happening and what Neo's imagining. So I guess he doesn't actually then come into the real world and just start killing people. That's all within the bounds of this MMO that he's playing?
Yeah. I mean, when he's going in the real world is really just more like a chat room, if anything. Okay. The Nebuchadnezzar, that ain't a ship. You know what that is? That's his guild. That's his guild name, all right? He joins his guild and he goes on raiding parties. And maybe because he's a computer programmer, they're kind of breaking the code a little. And these, the agents, they're not agents. They're actually admins who are like, oh, we're going to ban you because, you're breaking the code.
You're a hacking son of a bitch.
You're a hacking son of a bitch, right? And so when the characters get killed in the Matrix, they're not getting killed. They're just getting permabanned. So there you go.
Okay, so
it's an MMORPG.
Escapism gone wild, a little bit of an all in his head thing, and we'll come back to that later at the end of the episode. But a few of these will be, because it's that kind of a thing.
One of those episodes.
We talk about all in his head, and it's usually these theories that people come up with are usually, it's all a dream, or it's all a whatever, it's all a Matrix. This is one of those movies that kind of sparked that in the collective unconsciousness where, what if you were plugged into a computer? Where, you can trace those sorts of theories and ideas as far back as like Descartes, or even further, like Homer in the Odyssey. There's stuff about being stuck in dreams and all that kind of stuff.
I think pre-Matrix, you could draw a line between Matrix and pre-Matrix. And pre-Matrix, you had Descartes basically demon. Yeah, are you being just misled by an evil demon? After that, it stopped being an evil demon and started being are you actually inside a computer and your brain is like in a jar somewhere, but you're living in a virtual world?
Well, there were sci-fis that did have that idea before the Matrix.
But none of them have had the pervasive...
Well, that's what I'm saying. None of them hit the collective unconsciousness as much as the Matrix did, because it was a massive blockbuster, shown all around the world internationally. It was one of these big, massive hits that, brought that to people's to minds. We've got another theory here, and this one, I believe, Anthony, is from... Darren, who contacted us on Twitter. And what did he say, Anthony?
Darren said to us that the human beings, they're not actually grown as batteries. What they actually are is units of RAM, or they are the chipsets of a CPU.
Okay.
All right? Because it's long been parodied that human bodies are terrible sources of energy, and that you would need to put more energy into the human body in order then to get out of it. That's the second law of thermodynamics, right?
Okay.
But if you use RAM, right, if you use them as RAM or CPU, the human brain is still one of the most complex robots or memory storage, memory processing devices that exists currently, and probably will for 100 years. A supercomputer is still not as complex as the human brain.
Okay.
So it would make more sense that you use human beings as RAM in order to use their brains to store and process information or to hold it, or to use as a CPU, or both, so they can help manage the load of managing the entire robot network.
Yeah, it's smart because, then they say, or I've heard, or at least it's talked about in science fiction a little bit, the next realm of computing is organic computing. Yeah. And if you were to bypass, that research path, you could just use existing technology, which is human brains.
You could.
If you could use those and integrate those into a system, then you'd have a very powerful computer immediately without much effort, especially if you're able to breed them. You're just getting free humans.
Well, it's very easy to make a human as opposed to having to make a new computer or a new processor. Because, sure, you can probably recycle some things, but at some point the robots are going to have to start digging into the ground to get raw material, which is a bit of an added complicated mess that maybe they don't want to do. When human beings are just there, and all you need is a sperm and an egg, an incubator, and some food. And the food is just liquefied human remains. All right, who cares about, CJV or mad cow disease? Who cares about that?
Okay.
All right, they're going to die anyway. You're using them as RAM, so you just force feed them the dead of the humans, as the movie says.
Is that what they actually say?
That's exactly what it says. It says they liquefy the dead and feed it to the living. That's it. You don't need a lot of energy. You don't need anything, really, to keep that going. Maybe add in some extra water and some extra nutrients here and there, but that's about it. It's much more efficient than opening up an open-cut mine.
The economics of that are a little bit astounding, though. Surely they're not going to have enough people die every day or week or month or whatever, enough to feed the number of humans that they have alive.
That's interesting because it'd be an example of a robot. Would it be able to have a command economy? Would he be able to make that work? Because would he be able to predict the supply and demand? Because he has the ability to take in all of the information and not miss the minutia that actually causes some of the issues that happen from command economies where they can't predict supply or demand. And if he can do that, then it doesn't matter. He just has to say, all right, kill those people in 10 days. Says that will feed enough people. We'll just kill them. Who gives a shit? Think of a reason. Terrorist attack, they kill them. That's good enough. Whatever. That fits the Matrix.
Well, bonus theory for you. What if they breed far more than they actually need to actually survive? So you have a whole bunch of babies that are being liquefied, like grown fetuses.
That makes sense.
So you've only got a 9-month growth for each of these food sources that you can then liquefy and feed to the other humans.
That kind of makes sense. I can see that.
Because a full-grown human, assuming that the brain power of a fully grown adult is more powerful than a baby. If not, then you just use the baby in the Matrix, right?
Maybe, yeah. Well,
don't know.
Who knows? Hey, maybe these human beings don't actually have to need that much energy anyway put into them because you set it up so that they don't actually have to worry about their muscles or any other vital organs other than the things that are digestive tract, breathing, and brain. That's all you really need. Oh, and heart, right? Everything else, who cares? Who gives a shit about the spleen? Who cares about, the shit? You probably don't even have poo coming. Because remember, poo's got to go somewhere. Maybe it's just in the giant, that fleshy thing. Because if there's no bacteria, at least, maybe you don't get eaten by it. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Whatever.
Flesh-eating bacteria growing out of poo. Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, that's what I'm alluding to. Yes.
All right. Okay, so we've got another one here, Anthony, and can you introduce it to us?
Yes, I can. So the obvious one, I think, for everybody who has an alternate theory or idea about the world, they don't come from the mainstream cloth, if you will. They think mainstream news is fake news. Essentially, they watch The Matrix and they go, oh my gosh, this movie is about whatever I believe in. Because they essentially, human farming is insert whatever ideology or fringe ideology you have here. So, whether you're a hardcore communist or an anarcho-capitalist, you can watch the scene where Morpheus is explaining human farming and feel that the deeper meaning in the scene applies directly to you and your ideology. You're going to interpret it as, oh my gosh, this is about what I believe in. And it's not, but I'll get to that. It's just you applying that to what you're interpreting.
It's the red pill.
Yep, exactly.
See the truth. And now that used to be
woke. Woke is another expression. I'm woke as all hell.
Woke is an interesting expression because that was at least traditionally owned by far right wing conservatives, and now increasingly I'm seeing that
the other way around. It's the other way around.
Really? I thought it was a far right wing expression.
That was a left wing. That was a Black Lives Matter term. They've used that for ages, I think.
Oh, I thought the denizens of 4chan were using that back a few years ago.
They were as well, right? And I think it's more a competing idea. Because, again, it's the same idea that they're all in a dream world. And then you say someone's woke, another person's woke. And so people who are from the opposite political view will say, stop using that word, because it doesn't mean what you think it means. It means it ascribes to my ideology.
Yeah. Which is exactly what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I just wanted to bring that theory out, because I know people, if they have these extreme views, they will definitely say, the Matrix is clearly about this, guys. Why didn't you bring this up? And it's like, well, yeah, okay, it is, kind of. It's just an oppressive organization is somehow enslaving humanity for its own personal gain. That's the ideology, and you ascribe to it whatever you believe.
The Matrix is kind of... The main interpretation is that there's more going on than your escapism.
Yeah.
In whichever way you take that. Okay, so you decided in your MMO theory, or the escapism was the Matrix.
Yeah.
But the Matrix is kind of saying that your everyday life is your escapism. You've got to look beyond that. There's more important things going on, X, Y, Z, whatever your political opinion says that they are.
Yeah.
So that's important to remember with any of these, deeper, say deeper loosely, but any of these things that have more thematic depth, like Ghost in the Shell, any of that kind of thing. You can use your own interpretation on top of the very loose meaning of the piece of entertainment to give your own ideas. Mm-hmm. All right. I've got one of my own.
Yes.
I can throw in the ring. This is a bit of a shorter one, but this has a little bit to do with Matrix Reloaded.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So it takes ideas from Matrix Reloaded. In Matrix Reloaded, that's the first one where Neo can use his powers in the real world. And this got me thinking. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, that's a Matrix within the Matrix, which I think was a popular idea back even in the first Matrix. What if the real world wasn't actually the real world, but another Matrix? And these layers. And I thought that the reason that he could use his powers in the real world is because he was the chosen one in all of the layers. Okay. And his powers were more powerful in the Matrix, as it were, and in the real world, in inverted commas, he still had powers, but they were less available because he didn't realize that there was a Matrix yet. And once he started to realize, then his powers would come out, and then he'd eventually go to the next layer, whatever that might be. But it always made sense to me, like, you know, the robots have to have an extra layer of safety. You know, these people are escaping from the Matrix and into the real world. What if they had their extra insurance policy? Yeah. You know, the humans are so caught up with escaping the Matrix to go into the real world. What if they were only getting one layer up? What if there was still another layer keeping them imprisoned?
Well, the Matrix says that, like, the architect says that 1% of people reject the Matrix and they're allowed to rebel. And that's the point. Is they get to a certain point of rebellion, and then the machines come in and they destroy all of Zion.
Yes.
And then it repeats the process. Well, it makes sense then that if 1% of the people do that, you have another Matrix that then has 1% of those people then realize, oh my gosh, there's another Matrix.
But see, I don't think any of those people would, because they're so caught up with they've already found their truth, which kind of ties into that last theory. You know, you're talking about the human farming being interpreted as whatever. You know, if you're already found your truth, you're not looking for truth anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, that's something that binds a lot of people in the actual real world, the world that we live in. Once people think they find their truth, whatever it be, religion, conspiracy theory, political beliefs, they're not looking for their truth anymore. They've found their truth, even if their truth is wrong. Which is, I find a very interesting idea.
Yeah, it could be true.
Okay. What's next?
What's next? Well, a bit of a longie. Not too longie.
Yeah, well, let's dive in. We're running out of time. We're burning time.
No, burning time. So basically, the Matrix is about exceptional individuals, again, similar idea, who are actually doing recreational drugs. This is that Neo is a bright, young computer programmer. He's graduated from a decent uni. All right, he's learned a lot of concepts that expand his mind. We know this because he actually has a philosophy textbook that he keeps most of his programs in.
Yeah.
All right, was it Simulate and Simulacra?
Okay.
Which is complicated, very complicated thing by Jean Baudrillard.
Sure.
Still trying to wrap my head around it. I kind of get it. It's like,
have you read it?
I have not read it. Have
no,
you?
because you don't read books.
I don't read books.
How are you trying to wrap your head around it?
Have you read books? Have you read books?
I read books, but I haven't read that particular book.
Well, how can you wrap your head around it if you don't read the book?
Well, I didn't say I was wrapping my head around it.
And
move on with the theory.
Anyway, so he's going to be. So he's really happy because he's got a new job, right?
Yeah.
Like any graduate, he's hired this big company. Only as time goes on, he realizes that this big company doesn't appreciate him. He doesn't appreciate his intelligence. He doesn't appreciate his ingenuity. Life is not what he thought it would be. He lives in a pretty shitty apartment, let's be honest. Right? It's a single-bedroom studio. It's not even a single bedroom. It's a studio apartment. It's dank as. Right? And he works at a place, and I got to assume that he's making some decent money as a software engineer.
Okay?
That seems to be his job. Right?
Well, yeah.
But his skills and his intelligence are not appreciated where he works. He's like a rough cog that's slowly being weathered away by time into fitting into the system. He's a young man who's basically conforming to the world.
Yeah. And most people kind of go through that. You know, when they leave university, they get into the real world. They're worn down to fit society. Well, you can see that as a good or a bad thing, depending on your own views.
Yeah. But he starts hanging out with the wrong crowd, essentially, right? Because he starts doing it as a part-time job. He starts making these computer programs. Now, I get the opinion that he's actually doing it for fun. Because, again, he works for a software company, or he works in a company as a software engineer. I can't imagine he doesn't have some amount of money. You got to be making maybe about, I don't know how much they make in America, but comparative to Australian salary, today's salary amount, 60, 70,000.
That's going to mean nothing to our American viewers.
50,000 to American viewers.
Who knows?
They make less money in America, but
the
cost of living is lower.
I
They say 50,000. That's a lot of money. I'm like, it's not really. That's not a lot of money for. It's
Just move on.
Anyway, I got confused. Anyway, so he starts hanging out with the wrong crowd, all right? And this guy basically is like, at the start of the movie, he buys this computer program off.
Yes.
And he goes, you ever feel like you're in a dream world or blah, 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 and you can't wake from the dream?
Yeah.
That's Morpheus. And he goes, yeah, man, it's mescaline. It's the only way to fly, which is peyote.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. Is that what he actually says? His quote is it's mescaline?
It's mescaline. It's the only way to fly.
Yeah.
And then he gets invited to go out to a club.
Okay.
Well, all right. Here's a chance for him to escape this shitty world. He goes to the club. He starts doing mescaline. Starts doing some drugs. That mescaline causes hallucinations.
Yeah.
So everything from that point becomes the weird sort of hallucinogenic world.
Okay.
So he starts taking all these drugs. He's late to work.
Yep.
The next day. Why? Because he's doing drugs. All right? But he doesn't care anymore. He's kind of found something that's cool and he appreciates him. He's experiencing life as opposed to what it was before, as being worn down.
Yeah.
When he goes to meet Morpheus, he's not given a choice of whether or not to experience the real world or the fake world. It's the choice of, do you continue down this path of self-destruction but ecstasy, or do you go back home, go to sleep, and go to work? Those are your only two options.
Yeah.
He chooses to go and hang out with Morpheus and do more drugs. Right? Yeah, well, that's basically it. Which basically means he's going to be fired because he's not going to turn up to work tomorrow. He'll be fired. He'll lose his job. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit. Right? So that because he doesn't give a shit, he's also willing to throw caution to the wind and start doing things like heroin.
Are you talking about the injection of the bug thing?
Yes. No.
The de-injection?
No. The injection into the back of the head.
Ah, okay.
Right? There's a lot of needle imagery in this movie.
Yes.
And that's him doing heroin.
Okay.
He's basically high on heroin, and he's wasting his life away on heroin as escaping into a world where he is finally in control.
Okay.
He had no control. He's an exceptional individual. Now he has that control. But in reality, he's dying. Because in the real world, what happens to him? He's lying on a fucking bed, right? That's what it is. He's in the Nebuchadnezzar. He's lying in a bed, right, with a needle in the back of his head, in his arm, and you want to say, right? And he's basically getting beaten up by agents, and he dies. He does actually die.
Yeah.
So he ODs at one stage. He does come back to life, but
He flatlines, but he comes back.
He does come back. He's lucky. NDE, yeah.
Had an NDE.
So that's the theory. It's actually about drugs.
Okay.
And a path of self-destruction.
Sure. That's a bit of a wordy one for our listeners to wrap their heads around. I do like that stuff about needle imagery. That's pretty sharp. You get my
that's good.
pun there.
Okay.
So our last big theory for the show, and then we got a couple of things to wrap up, is your Jesus analogy. Now, this is something that is talked about a lot when you talk about the Matrix. There's even been books written about the Jesus parallels in the Matrix, but I believe you have a slightly different spin on it.
So I'm just going to do a little bit of recap. I'm not going to say who Jesus is. If you don't know who Jesus is, well, you got to learn. You got to know about Jesus. Go learn Jesus.
Who's Jesus, Anthony?
Who's Jesus? Jesus is the guy who makes me my coffee.
Jesus.
No, we don't have any Jesuses in this country. We have like one, maybe. I don't know.
That is very racist.
It's not racist at all. We don't have a lot of Spanish people in this country. Or Mexicans in this country. We don't. Because we don't have a border with Mexico.
You don't say Mexicans. You say Latinos.
No. You say Hispanic because they speak Spanish, you twat.
I don't know what...
Hispanic means people who are Spanish from the Central American area. All right, from the Spanish-speaking nations. But Latino means you're coming from, I think, the Latin-speaking nations, which is Portuguese.
Nobody speaks Latin. Go on.
Anyway, fucking racist here.
I'm not the one who's... I'm trying to be politically correct. I'm trying. Right, so, for the benefit of you, dear listener. For the benefit of you.
Neo is basically born. He's the chosen one to save mankind from destruction. He goes and has to make a self-sacrifice. In the middle of the movie, he dies and then resurrects. Right? And in his resurrection, he then is able to defeat the evil. That is exactly the Jesus story. There's a lot of similarities, like Morpheus is clearly John the Baptist, and he's baptizing him, Jesus, bringing him into the real world. Trinity, I think, is supposed to be Mary Magdalene, and the agents are just the Pharisees as well as the Roman government.
Okay.
But I'm not going to go into that. What I'm going to say is that I think this added to this theory is that Neo is the fifth one. Okay. Now, why we learn that from the architect, who's not in this movie, in the next movie, who says that there has been 6 matrices. I believe. Sorry, it's the 6th one, isn't he? Yeah. So there's 6, including Neo. There are 6 matrices, and we're currently in the 6th one. And Neo is the 6th one. Now, before that, there was a beta matrix where everything was perfect and wonderful, right? Okay, that's just the regular one. So we're actually technically in the 7th one, which is important because 7th is a holy number in Judaism. And there's a lot of Jewish symbolism in this movie. Basically, the city is called Sion. The Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, well,
Right?
it's all
Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar is the person who destroys Jerusalem.
Yes.
All right. And then Cyrus the Great comes along and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there are 5 the ones before Neo, right? Which line up perfectly with the 5 major prophets of the Jewish faith.
Okay.
Aside from Abraham. Damn you, Abraham. You get in the way. We're not going to... But you didn't deliver the people from oppression. It was Moses who started off, so we're starting off with Moses.
Okay, so you're not counting Abraham.
I'm not counting Abraham. Maybe he was the beta one. I don't know.
Okay. Who's the beta test?
He was the beta test.
Go on.
Okay. So Morpheus says that the one, was the first person to rescue a few of the people of Zion. They were the people who set them free, brought them into Zion. Who brought the people out of slavery and into Zion? Who was it, Joe?
Moses.
Moses, damn, boom, done, good, excellent.
I zoned out, but then I rescued it.
Yeah, you saved it, man. You picked it up, you popped it up. All right. Then there were 2 to 4 other major prophets in the Bible before Jesus. You got Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Daniel's probably the last one because of the Nebuchadnezzar ship. Then you've got the 5th one that come after that. And who is the major prophet that comes after Daniel? Jesus. Exactly. Boom.
It's like Sunday school.
It's like Sunday school. I'm going to hit you with a 1 meter rule if you don't answer my questions. So there's a bit more imagery about more confirming that, yes, he is actually Jesus.
Okay.
All right. You see him right there, man. It's obvious. It's obvious to everybody.
Sure. All right.
If only people listen.
If only they listened.
Wake up, sheeple.
Okay. We're getting very close to the end of our episode, so I believe you wanted to wrap up with some numbers, and then we'll quickly go into my all in his head for this week.
Yep, sure. So there's a lot of numbers in this movie, but there's just some interesting ones I thought you might like a little Easter egg. So at the beginning of the movie, Trinity's in room 303, where the cops are trying to get her, right? To capture her or get her. Now, a 303 response on a computer, right? A 303 response is a HTTP error where a get failure occurs. So the cops fail to get her. So I think that's a joke that the Wachowskis or the writers, I don't know if it's Wachowski siblings.
Siblings
twins.
Now, yes.
Siblings.
No, they're sisters now, I think.
They can't be sisters. One of them's not a woman, right?
They're both women now.
Oh, they're women. Okay, well then, whatever. Twins. They're twins, right?
No, well, just call them siblings. It's easier.
All right, siblings. Wachowski siblings. Excellent. All right. So maybe it was like the writers put that in there. Another one's the agent's number plate. When you break it down into binary,
yes,
and you split it up where it logically should be, and you turn it into base 6, because remember we're in the 6 matrix.
Yep.
Right. You come up with the following numbers: 13, 04, and 14.
Okay.
So that represents the 3 agents that are in the car.
Yep.
Now 4 and 14 are not prime, but 13 is a prime number. So I'm going to go out on the limb and assume that 13 is the number given to Agent Smith. And I think the computer just gives people numbers for their actual name. They don't name them, they just give them numbers, because why wouldn't you? You're doing it in sequential order. This is the 13th agent, this is the 4th agent, 14th agent, this is the 15th. All
right, sure.
Something like that.
It's getting very numbery.
Very numbery. So much numbers, you have no idea.
All right, wrap it up.
Wrap it up. I'm done.
Oh, that's very quickly wrapped up.
There you go.
All right, so that was some numbers there, if you can understand any of that rambling.
You should have seen my whiteboard at home. I was going full beautiful mind. I was seeing numbers everywhere. They were all over the screen. It was crazy.
You were.
I love that kind of shit. It's the best.
Okay, that brings us to All in His Head, the segment of the show where we try and fit it into how it was all in a character's head, or her head, or somebody's head.
It's all a dream.
This week, it's all in Neo's head.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. But my spin on it was a little bit like your MMO theory. And I said that when Neo enters the real world, that's when he's actually entering the fake world. Okay? So it draws a little bit on the monomyth stuff that we all know and love. You know, we have the traditional hero's journey, and much of the first act or the first third of the movie, first quarter really, is ramping up to entering a different world. And for Neo, it's entering into the real world, or at least his enlightenment of the Matrix in the real world. What if that was the point where he actually entered into non-reality and everything before that was actually real? Like you were saying with the MMO.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a dream. It could be the Matrix. That's when he enters the Matrix. He's kidnapped by Morpheus, put in some sort of sadistic sex dungeon.
You never know, right?
you know, Morpheus always struck me as a bit of a shady character. Those trench coats and all. Hanging around with people like Trinity. She's not to be trusted.
She's not to be trusted. She isn't.
Anyway.
I would not trust that woman. Why wouldn't I trust her? Because she's trying to, like, give you drugs.
Yeah, well, that's
You
true.
know, that's clear.
Yeah, you can't trust anyone that's trying to give you drugs.
Except except a trusted drug dealer, I imagine.
Yeah, or don't trust pharmacies because, you know, they work for the man.
They do. They work for the man.
Wake up,
sheeple.
All right, so all in his head, it could, you know, this is the one episode you could literally come up with anything.
Yeah.
For anything for this movie, it could be all in his head.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything we talked about was all in his head.
Hell,
but, it's just one of those things.
He takes the mescaline, and then from that point on, everything else is in his head.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Why not? And he wakes up one day and says, "Whoa, that was a weird dream, huh?" And he realizes he's late for work, and he gets fired. He's like, "Oh man." That's how the movie goes. And then he tries to fly, and he can't fly because he's in the real world.
He's just on drugs.
He's just on drugs.
That brings us to the end of the episode, and we are Abstract Nonsense, the Fan Theories podcast. If you want to find out more about us, you can do so in various different ways. Most of them are social media. You can find us on Twitter or Facebook. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next episode.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a couple of days with another episode. Hope you enjoy it. Have a great week. Stay abstract.